My 21-year-old niece recently started dating Jim, who's also 21. While everyone was initially happy for her, her parents and I noticed that my young teen nephew was nervous around him. We managed to get the reason out of him, and it was absolutely terrible. Jim used to work where my nephew played hockey and bullied him badly. My nephew's name is something similar to Jack, but Jim would call him Jackie 24/7 and treat him like a girl. He had it out for him, and other people joined too. My nephew quit hockey because of him and even developed a panic disorder. This all happened in a year, and it was a really tough time. So when I found out that Jim was the cause of all of this, I'll admit, I freaked out. Her parents talked to her about it, and it turns out she knew. She said that her brother's always been a little sensitive anyway. We were all shocked. She didn't budge though, and she said she plans on marrying Jim, so we'd better move on already. My brother and his wife are devastated. They can't control who she dates, but they no longer let him come over. My niece is still insisting that everyone's overreacting. My brother and his wife were out. It was just my nephew and me when the doorbell rang. It was Jim and my niece. I told them to please leave, but my niece said no. She said that I even have less authority over her than her parents do, so I'd better move out of her way. I said no and told her to come back alone, and I might consider letting her in. She said that she and Jim are a package deal. So I said, then leave. She was all huffy and said that I was being unfair and she couldn't choose who she loves. Jim even tried to say that he's changed, but I refused to hear it and eventually just shut the door in their faces. I heard my niece yelling though, called me every name in the book, and accused me of favoring her crybaby of a brother. She even suggested that her brother was manipulating all of us. While I definitely don't believe that last part, it's true that I have no authority over her and therefore have no right to say anything to her. I suppose I should have ignored her instead of arguing and trying to lecture her. She never lost her cool throughout all of this, but she did when I shut the door on her. She said I had no right and that she lived here while I didn't. I don't think I'm the idiot necessarily, but I'm not sure about my treatment of my niece. Maybe instead of attacking her so much, I could have listened. Plus, if I managed to make her believe in me favoring her brother, then I must be doing something wrong. Am I the idiot? Called me every name in the book and accused me of favoring her crybaby of a brother. Wow, looks like Jim's attitude is rubbed off on your niece, and it's now her turn to bully this poor kid, all while trying to convince you that Jim has changed. You are not the idiot. You were following the rules of your brother and his wife. He wasn't allowed over. Make sure they know about this altercation. She's 21. She needs to be booted from the nest if she's going to act this way. Yeah, you were left in charge of the child, whose parents have banned Jim from their house. Your niece knows that Jim is not allowed at the house and tried to sneak him in when her parents weren't home. You tried multiple times to tell her no nicely, and then finally closed the door when she wouldn't stop. You've got nothing to feel bad about, and I'm sure your nephew and brother and sister-in-law are grateful you ended it. You get that she likely waited until the parents left because she thought you'd be easier to manipulate, right? But OMG, the way she's treating her own brother? Yikes! Holy cow! You were following the parents' wishes to protect their son from his bully. I hope the whole family cuts her off for this behavior. Update. I told my brother and sister-in-law about the incident. There really is no other word to describe their reaction apart from devastated. My brother took her keys from her the other day in fear of something like this happening. He said he couldn't trust her, and he seemed right. She's been sleeping at Jim's place now. Honestly, it's insane. Niece was protective when her brother began developing his disorder. She was scared and cried when he ended up in the hospital once. I don't understand why she's so serious about Jim. They've only been dating for 6 months, tops. But the fact that she chooses her brother's bully is disappointing, especially since she saw how it affected her brother personally. She's still my niece, and I still love her, despite the disappointment and anger. My boyfriend and I, both 33, still live with our parents, so we never get to have quality alone time together. Last weekend, his parents were away on vacation. We planned a romantic dinner on Saturday at his parents' house since it was free. We went shopping for groceries and wine, and when we got back to the house, ready to start our date night, His sister, 25, was there with a bunch of her friends in the backyard having a barbecue. She also had people over the night before. We were both disappointed since she usually works overnight on Saturdays. She claims she always has this Saturday off, but we think she probably requested the day off since the house would be free. I explained our plans to her, and she said no worries. They were in the backyard, so no one would bother us in the kitchen, and we could still have our date night. We opened our wine and started to cook, but she and her friends were being so loud and kept coming in to use the bathroom down the hall from the kitchen. We had enough. I went outside and told her they were being too loud, and it was unacceptable when she knew we were trying to have our date night. I asked her if she and her friends could move their barbecue to another location. She had her friends over last night, and this was our night to use the house. She copped an attitude with me and said she lived here and I was just a guest, so I had no right to demand they leave. She again said we could be in the kitchen and they wouldn't bother us. I was angry, and so was my boyfriend. We made our dinner, ate, and then I just went home to my parents. They were still outside hanging out when I left. I made a comment to her on the way out that maybe it was time to grow up, and if she were to actually ever be in a relationship, she would understand how important it is to have alone time. She just rolled her eyes. This morning, my boyfriend called me to say his parents were unhappy with me. He suggested we hang out at my house until it blows over. How am I in the wrong? We planned around her schedule. We picked Saturday because she always works Saturday. She had friends over Friday. So how is it fair that we can't get our own night to use the house, just like she did? Seriously? Have we gotten to the point where 33-year-olds are acting like this? You can't tell your boyfriend's sister she can't live life at her house. This is beyond petty and childish. You are the idiot, and so is your boyfriend, for crying out loud. Still living with your parents? I made a comment to her on the way out that maybe it was time to grow up. I think this comment is more appropriately aimed at you and not at your boyfriend's 25-year-old sister who lives there. Do you or he ever have plans to grow up and get your own place? I can't believe you wrote all of that and didn't realize that you and your boyfriend are idiots. You're in your 30s and complaining that you have to share your parents' house with a sibling in their 20s? Wow, just move out already. Get your own place if you want a long time. This is so pathetic. His sister lives there too. You're not entitled to his parents' place alone just because they're out of town. I married my husband 3 years ago. He's the baby of his large family, 11 kids. His older sister has an 18-year-old daughter who's expecting a baby. Niece is Elizabeth. She's a lovely person, and she and I have been close since I met the family 6 years ago. She was always a huge fan of my name, Estrella. She liked how uncommon it was, and she admitted that her parents thought my name was dumb. She talked about how boring her name was and wished she had one like mine. She told me that she'd love to name her future kids like me one day. I thought it was sweet. Sister-in-law and her husband have often used my name and my older brother's as examples of dumb things people name their kids. My older brother is Finch. All my siblings and I have names that my in-laws don't exactly love. But mine and my older brother's names get the most mentions in that context. My husband told his sister to knock it off before, and we even took a small break from her over it. What happened is a few weeks ago, sister-in-law started ranting and raving at me about how it was all my fault her grandson would have a ridiculous and atrocious name, and that she hopes I'm proud of myself. That my incompetent, dumb-as-heck parents, who had no idea what a name is and how to plan for a kid's future, had started her daughter down the same path as them, and she told me I should have never let her daughter think that my name was a good thing, or that I wasn't made miserable by it. She said I might pretend, but even I know my parents were sick for doing it and should be ashamed of themselves for saddling me with it, and that I have to hate them deep down for it. My husband told her to get out and not to come near us again. Our niece called upset and we talked. She said her parents were trying to get her boyfriend to talk her out of their chosen name. I told her that the name she chose was lovely and that I could speak from experience, that it is possible to grow up loving your more unusual name and not being held back by it. So I encouraged her to follow her heart and name him what she chose. She asked to speak to my younger brother, who has the same name she chose, and is the only person she's ever heard with it. It made her feel better. Sister-in-law went on a rampage with the rest of the family over what I said to her, though, and some of my in-laws believe I was wrong to undermine her. My husband said she's being vicious and out of control for no reason. But did I handle this all wrong? Am I the idiot? The name in question is Cove, just for anyone who wonders. Not the idiot. Jesus, what are these people on? It's not their baby, so it's not their name to choose. Your name and Cove are fine names, lovely names in fact. The sister-in-law sounds like she knows her ability to control her daughter is dwindling and trying to grab and snatch back some, which is a shame because it could cause her to lose access to her own grandchildren. You've done nothing wrong. Sister-in-law should hit the asylum, LOL. Who the heck gets agitated over stupid names? I've heard plenty of bad names, and I never laughed at them more than once. The fact that she has no tact and has been vocal and rude about your name and your family names, and is now doing the same thing to her daughter and future grandson, speaks loud about her. Niece might decide she doesn't get a relationship with him because she's so rude. Your sister-in-law sounds controlling and unreasonable, and a bit abusive. Frankly, this isn't her decision. It's your niece's. You're not undermining your sister-in-law because your niece is an adult who can make her own choices. I'm glad that she has someone in her family who supports her. Just keep being there for her and go low or no contact with your sister-in-law until she decides to speak to you like a rational adult. I, 24 female, have a baby with my husband. I have an older sister, 38, and she's child-free. My older brother, 42, has 3 children. He's been with his partner, 45, for nearly 15 years. Their eldest, 24 female, is the bio daughter of my brother's partner from a past relationship. Their other 2 children were adopted at ages 5 and 7, currently boys in their teens. When I gave birth to my daughter, my mother cried because she was so happy to see the first baby born into the family. Of course, that didn't sit well with me, but I was tired and didn't think much about it. Since then, she's only gotten worse. She keeps saying things to me like she's so happy to have a baby around to spoil finally. I've asked her not to spoil the baby, since my husband and I are fairly anti-consumerist, and we already have everything we need. Also, we wanted to keep things relatively gender neutral, and we chose not to know the gender before birth. Now my mother's going all out with pink gifts, insistent no one will know she's a girl if she's dressed like that. She complains my sister, nor I am feminine enough for her, and has remarked that I'm at least maternal enough to want to experience motherhood. Then she went so far as to say she was so happy to have her first granddaughter to spoil. That finally set me off. I told her she has a granddaughter already, and I don't appreciate how she's treating my baby preferentially to my brother's kids. Her claim is they live farther away, 1 hour, and are all older, not babies, and she's just excited about a baby. So we argued about it, and I haven't been talking with her much for the 2 weeks since then. My mother recently turned 60, and her party was today. I texted her last week that I wouldn't be attending. Her read receipts are on, and it was read immediately. Apparently at the party, she acted surprised and hurt that we didn't show up. My phone started blowing up with calls from my family, most of whom were asking if I was all right, because it's not like me to be a no-show. I let them know I had told her I wasn't going to the party. This caused quite a dramatic stir. My mother's claiming she doesn't know what she did wrong. Some of the family members that called advised me that some things you just have to put aside and show up for your family even when you're mad at them, telling me to be the bigger person or else I'm an idiot. It's hard for me to explain why I'm upset with her, and I'm second guessing. Maybe she's just so happy to have a baby around. Maybe I'm overreacting. Not the idiot. Your mom's behavior is atrocious, and it's really great of you to stick up for your brother's kids. However, treating adopted grandkids or stepchildren like they don't count, even unintentionally, is super crappy of your mom. It also sounds like she's trying to push her values on you to boot. We currently have a baby and are doing all gender neutral everything, And if one of our parents tried to do what your mom is doing, I'd be furious. We know we've been so lucky that they haven't, and it definitely makes me feel for you that you haven't been as lucky. This is a matter of wording. Your mother has said that she's excited about the first baby born into the family. She's excited about her first grandbaby. To you, it means she's ignoring her adopted grandchildren and your brother's stepchildren. But to her, it means there's a baby in the family at last. Sure, she could have expressed it better, but she's not ignoring her other grandchildren. Are you sure you're not reacting this way because you're ticked off that she's not gender neutral around your daughter? While some of her remarks are sort of misogynistic, they don't seem like enough to justify your refusal to attend her party. You're delusional. Oh, she meant the first baby? That crap doesn't matter. The mother had an argument laying a foundation that led to why she got a text saying, "I won't be there," then gave a faux reaction to it and gaslighted the OP. That emotional room manipulation is toxic as heck. The mother knew that if she feigned shock and surprise, she could turn family members on OP. It's a classic. Agree, she's boundary stomping, insulting you and your sister because you don't fit her version of femininity. And while it's one thing to have unique relationships with each grandchild, it's quite another to act as if your older grandchildren are somehow lesser. She's disrespecting you as the parent. You make the decisions, not her. You have the opinions about styles and colors and choices, not her. Later, your child will have these opinions for herself. If your mother tries to do this with you, she's likely to do it to your child too. What if your girl likes trucks or superheroes or not bows and ruffles? What if she likes ruffles, but only the ones with dinosaurs on them? Will her grandmother insult her then and tell her her opinions are wrong? I, 45 female, lost my first husband, Mike, when my eldest, Sarah, 28, was 10. Sarah got married 2 days ago, so during the family after ceremony party, I'm not sure what it's called abroad, a few of our family members, my dad, Mike's mom, and one of his brothers, and my son, said a few speeches about her. It was all fine until my sister-in-law, Mike's sister, started her speech. She started talking about Mike, and the speech mentioned almost nothing about Sarah. The one thing she said about Sarah is how she's proud Sarah didn't replace Mike with Jake. She then brought up the topic of Mike's death. Sarah always had nightmares and panic attacks about it, so we avoid that specific topic of him. And when my sister-in-law started going into detail about it, both she and my mother-in-law, Mike's mom, started having panic attacks. Jake and his siblings started telling sister-in-law to stop. My siblings, myself, and Mike's brothers were too busy with Sarah and mother-in-law. She wouldn't stop. Long story short, they finally had to kick her out of the wedding. But all of yesterday, I had people calling to ask me to apologize to sister-in-law because, according to them, while sister-in-law was wrong, it wasn't my husband's place to kick her out. So, am I the idiot? Because I'm still in shock after what happened. I'm not thinking clearly. So, let me understand. Your first husband's sister decided at your daughter's wedding to make a tragic speech about her brother that's passed away for, I don't know, let me guess, 18 plus years? And now your family wants you to apologize? But your daughter, the bride, had a full-blown panic attack at her wedding, and that's probably ruined all her other memories of what should have been the best day of her life. Am I right? Because if I am, you are definitely not the idiot. Your sister-in-law is a witch. And I agree. The sister-in-law is the idiot here, and delusional to think it matters who kicked her out, since the point is she deserved to be kicked out. The only person who owes anyone an apology is your sister-in-law, who clearly was being too self-absorbed to read the room. I will disagree and say you are the idiot for not calling your sister-in-law and ripping her a new one. I understand that she's still mourning the loss of her brother. That's understandable. But to use what should have been a joyous occasion for everyone to bring up the details and not stop when seeing family members suffering was unforgivable. She needs to hear about the pain she caused. I'm so sorry your family had to go through that, OP.